Во тема на денот, како што најавив, разговарам со амбасадорот на Европската Унија, Михалис Рокас. Welcome, Ambassador. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
First, I would like to shortly talk about how the European Union helped Macedonia during this crisis after the tragedy in Kočani. What kind of mechanisms and what kind of help the EU provided our country?
First of all, I want to use this platform to tell again our heartfelt condolences. This was an insufferable tragedy, and it has affected us all in the European Union. And with this in mind, I recall that 6 a.m. I got a call that this tragedy was unfolding. And immediately, without thinking, we communicated with the EU ambassadors, and I'm pleased to see that the EU solidarity was there from the very first minute. Some member states, the neighbors, Greece and Bulgaria, they already managed to get out of the country in record time, severely burned individuals, and providing the transfer as well. So this is something very good, very positive. And then later on Sunday, when the government asked for the civil protection mechanism to be activated, then the whole apparatus went there, and I think we managed to get all the patients that were needed. Through this mechanism, there were around 40, but as I said, there were also member states that they took several victims, as I said, bilaterally, but also other partners like Serbia and Turkey. Yes. Of course, at this moment, this is our duty. There is nothing more, nothing less than our duty. We are closest friends and partners, and that's what you should expect when our partner, our friends in North Macedonia are in need.
Thank you. In recent days, understandably, almost everything is overshadowed by the news about the tragedy, but there was one thing that struck me as a positive thing during these recent days, and that is the fact that our country is the first in the Western Balkan region to use part of the funds from the growth plan. Can you tell us more about that? How are we going to spend those 52 million, and what are the preconditions to use this money?
Yeah, indeed. This is really positive news, and it reflects the hard work done both by North Macedonia and by us. The growth plan is a great platform to facilitate the country, accelerate its accession to the EU and integration to the internal market. But on the other hand, also it needs to fulfill some necessary reforms. So two successive governments, they put a lot, and one caretaker government, they put a lot of effort into that. So we managed in record time, I would say, to fulfill the initial criteria to allow for this pre-financing of 52.5 million euros to be released. Of course, this is only the start. We aim to bring to the country another 750 million euros, and that will be focused on the progress that you are going to achieve in key areas that are necessary: rule of law, fight corruption, what we call the fundamentals, but also on the public administration reform, on the public financial management, but in other key areas such as digitalization and human capital. And then we have a part which is for infrastructure, and there we aim, and the first priority is connectivity, especially with regard to road and rail like Corridor 8 and Corridor 10.
How soon do you think, in terms of reforms, our government and our country is going to be able to use this money, especially when it comes to the judiciary or the inspection services, which we have seen firsthand how important it is that these structures of government really function and are strengthened? I think the growth plan says 15% more people working for inspection services, which is really good. So how soon do you think that our government can keep up with this agenda?
I hope and believe very soon, because the reform agenda is the ownership, is the government, is the people of North Macedonia. They have put very strict commitments, and they have put also deadlines for achieving these commitments. Throughout this year, we will have something around approximately 36, I would say, boxes to be ticked off. But so that means that there is full focus, also with a view to releasing the corresponding funds. So it's all about determination, commitment, put also not only the necessary legislation, but follow up closely on the reforms. But we had already the release of the pre-financing and the first 5 or 6 prerequisites that they have been fulfilled. So this gives me encouragement that throughout the year we will have a good momentum of implementation.
The European Union has already supported reforms in the judiciary, but still we are facing significantly low trust in the independence of the whole judicial system. The government took a step to make interpellation of part of the members of the Judicial Council, which by law does not oblige them to leave their positions, but sends a certain message about how the current government and majority in the parliament feels about their work. What is EU's position on this, since we know that a group of experts came and gave different recommendations on the path on which this judicial body should be reformed?
Well, our view is that those recommendations, they have to be followed and fulfilled, because this is part of the EU standards on the rule of law. And these are the best practices also on the rule of law. So, and we have given it many recommendations on the annual reports that we every year publish around October for the country on the enlargement process, the peer review mechanism on the Judicial Council, but also a specific report on the rule of law. For us, these recommendations, they need to be followed. And of course, as you rightly said, those interpellations, they do not give legal ground for dismissals. What gives legal ground for dismissals is the laws of the country and the due process, which has to be followed according to the best European practices. So those interpellations, for us, it is a matter of concern.
The recent tragedy changed the things, but prior to that, the government was ready to go to the end of the process of dismissing the state public prosecutor, Mr. Kucevski. Now they have stopped this procedure. What is the EU, is this a surprise to the European Union that a government would like to change the state prosecutor? Is this a surprise, something that you would have a reaction on, or is that just something that you would expect for a new government to have closer cooperation with the public prosecutor to bring a person that they fully trust instead of somebody that they are not happy on how he was handling investigations in the past?
Well, obviously we are monitoring all this very closely, and what it matters the most is to establish, work hard to have an independent judiciary and public prosecutor's office or council of public prosecutors, that they can do all the necessary reforms within the system. It's all about a process, due process of the judicial system, and not about individuals. So therefore, of course, we take note that this was the intention and now that this has been halted. But I want to stress again that it is absolutely necessary to establish a system whereby the judiciary can work but also recruit, dismiss through procedures that they are not prone to any outside influence or political influence.
Sure. We are seeing some progress in the fight against corruption in the country. A larger number of cases related to corruption scandals from the previous government have been opened in the recent months. What is your assessment so far? Has there been a new momentum in the fight against corruption in our country?
I think so, very much so. I mean, we have, on the one hand, what the government has been saying publicly, that the fight against corruption is the number one priority. And this is something very positive. You need to believe and put all actions there. Then we see that some cases, they have been resurfaced, they have been investigated. There is work on that. And then it is also what is happening on the ground. And of course, this unspeakable tragedy would also demonstrate how, because it's not only corruption but also negligence. And obviously we will see how these investigations will go ahead. But also what it matters is to give to the judiciary sufficient means to do its work. The courts, the public prosecutor office, the different councils, they need to have the means and the budget to do their work without any interference. And I believe that this is understood well, and the government is working towards this end.
Yes, the budget for the judiciary as a prerequisite for its independence has been an issue for quite a long time in our country. Ambassador, the issue of constitutional amendments, which are necessary for opening chapters with the European Union, is almost non-present as a topic in our society in recent months, I would say. Do you remain optimistic that the country will continue on its path under the conditions that have been so far established by the 27 EU member states?
I will not answer that it's my job to be optimistic, but not only my job, but also EU member states ambassadors and my team is to help the country accelerate its reforms, so it is absolutely ready the moment that these constitutional amendments will be adopted. We all know the framework, but I don't want to speculate when it's going to happen. We know the facts, which they go back to July 2022, and this agreement, this council conclusion, the shape, the way forward for the negotiating framework and the EU accession. And this is a commitment both for North Macedonia and the EU, equally committed. At the same time also, I think we need to understand that this is a great moment of opportunity for EU enlargement. There is great momentum, and we see it despite what is happening around the world. The geostrategic imperatives are such that the EU at this moment is looking into many, many facets and many issues. Rearm EU, issues of security, issues of competitiveness. But in this, a lot of times depressing background, the EU enlargement remains and is a top priority. And we see that some countries like Montenegro and Albania, they are seizing this opportunity and are accelerating their work towards EU accession. And I have to say that I am confident and I strongly believe that once this issue is overcome, that North Macedonia can catch up fast.
You spoke about the global issues and how they affect the European Union. Is the EU considering a policy shift to ensure that bilateral disputes do not obstruct the enlargement process? Because the enlargement is not important only to our country, but it is important to the European Union in terms of the region, but also Ukraine.
It is true, and our leaders have already spoken publicly, the new EU leadership, about bilateral issues. But what it matters is the good momentum. We need to constantly work, especially with our neighbors, and this is throughout the EU, to build trusted and good neighborly relations. This is a common duty, and it was also very pleasing to see the solidarity that we witnessed following this tragedy. And the solidarity not only by governments, but also by the public, with donations, with great initiatives. So we need to build on this momentum, and the moment of realization is to see that in this very unstable world, there is no better alternative than an integrated European Union, and it is the only prerequisite for our citizens' prosperity. So I am hopeful, although the backdrop is quite bleak, that we will be able to overcome all relevant matters and move forward in an accelerated pace, as also the good work on the reform agenda has shown.
Yes. Are there any diplomatic efforts? We don't see any public meetings between government officials from Skopje or government officials from Sofia, but are there any diplomatic efforts? Our government is promoting the idea of delayed implementation of the constitutional amendments. Is this idea taking any root in the EU capitals?
Well, diplomatic activity this has always been. And I think if you don't know, it's great, because silent diplomacy a lot of times works. So all what I can say is that there have been many suggestions. There are many recommendations of how we can move ahead. I think that our duty, or at least from our side as EU delegation, it is to assist accelerating the reforms, so as you are 100% ready the moment we reopen the negotiations or we go to the clusters, you are ready to catch up very fast. Diplomacy always continues.
Yeah, that's good to hear, although we would like to have more details, not from you, but from those that are on the table. One of the issues that the EU has been constantly praising our government for is that it is aligned with the EU foreign policy and security policy. But we have seen in recent months that the foreign policy of the United States and the one from the European Union have taken a different direction, and we have seen that our government has been aligning in certain aspects with the US policy. Do you see any shifts that might hurt the perception of the EU that our country has been aligned with its foreign policy or not?
Well, the truth is that it's always aligned, because in the recent UN vote there was not an EU common position. That said, all what you refer to, it is true, but I think this is perhaps not the platform to comment on how North Macedonia, which is a sovereign country, decides to deal with any third country, including the United States. Relations with the United States for every nation, including for the European Union, are among the most important that one can have. They can be strategic and they're important. The transatlantic relation, it is perhaps the most important, the most robust two-way relation that exists in this world. So, but as there are cleavages and there are many issues that are happening, I truly believe that the focus should remain on the EU enlargement. This is the most successful EU policy, recognized by all. We can see that all 27 EU member states, that they have gained tremendously in prosperity, tremendously in security, and in everything else, on better living conditions after the accession, and very rapidly after accession. So I am here to promote the strategic relations with the EU, and I think should be a top priority.
Ambassador, this is something that I didn't plan to mention, but for the very end, I will shortly ask for your final comment. We have recently done a research that shows that the support for the EU is still very high in our country, above 60%, but there is 30% people that believe that we will never become members of the European Union, that are pessimists about the way forward. What would your message to them be? Is it still something that we can believe is there to catch, or there is a lot of space for being pessimistic about the EU road forward?
In this world of pessimism, we should remain really optimistic. We have on this to believe it, because I can bring the testimony that this momentum that it exists right now, it is there, it is going. I see how the discussions are very lively, both in Brussels, in the Western Balkans, and in other candidate countries, because it's also an issue of security, it's an issue of prosperity. There are a lot of matters happening in this world, and I think there is no other better way to protect ourselves than to reunite the continent. So we do extensive campaigns going around. It's pleasing to see that belief in EU enlargement is slowly increasing again. But of course, citizens are a lot more critical. They want to see real results. But I also hope through the growth plan and the reform agenda, they will start feeling EU-led and North Macedonia-owned reforms. They will see the results quickly, and with that, I'm pretty sure the belief will come there, because I see no other way forward, not only for North Macedonia, but also for the EU, than to put our futures in the same path and as quickly as possible.
Ambassador, thank you for being with us tonight and for your encouraging messages to our public.
Thank you.